BSN's Motoring 96 is brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.
You know, without a doubt, my favorite time of the year is Christmas. Watching all those young faces light up as they anticipate the treasures to be found in those presents under the tree. Well, you know, it's been like Christmas in the automotive world too, especially since BMW opened up its manufacturing plant here in South Carolina. The first model on the line was the 318. But then there was all this speculation about this so-called mystery car, the car that BMW would build exclusively here in Spartanburg for the worldwide market. Well, it's no mystery anymore. Here it is, the Z3 Roadster. We're here to get our first look at it and also, just like those presents under the tree, see if the reality can live up to the expectation. To the citizens of South Carolina, the opening of the BMW plant meant new job opportunities and a bright future. It was for BMW its first manufacturing plant outside of Germany. Although engineered by BMW, eyebrows were raised among critics and customers as to whether the local workforce and new suppliers could deliver. Well, production of the 318 has been right on schedule, but now there's a new kid on the line with the Z3. And the learning process begins once again.
Well, as far as production is concerned, of course, one time we were producing up to 80 units a day when we were producing the 318 sedan. And of course, we had to reduce production some to start training all of our people on that vehicle right at the moment. Quality comes first. So when you bring on a new car, you know, many of our competitors shuts plants down and retools and does all these kinds of things, and we never did any of that. We tried to bring it along with the new tooling that was required, and we're assuring the quality. Now, we'll continue to build the 318 series car as well as the new Z3 Roadster, and it will be compatible enough that it will be produced on the same assembly line system. So we can run cars one after the other if we'd like. So it'll work.
The Roadster has been a big part of BMW history since the early 30s. The Z derives from BMW's previous Roadster, the Z1, which was not available in North America. BMW decided against designating the new car as Z2 because of the association with the 3 Series. Most of the mechanics on the Z3 are adapted from the 318. The Z3 is rear-wheel drive with a manual soft top and is powered by a 1.9-liter twin-cam 16-valve 4-cylinder engine with horsepower rated at 140. A 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic are available. There is also a strong possibility the new 2.8-liter 6 could be available in 1997.
Well, we like to think that there is no competition for the Z3, but nonetheless, we do realize there are some, let's say, Roadster type of products out there. But I think when we look at the Z3, it's a unique car. It brings an emotional appeal to it, and it's truly BMW. But this is a new product that enables us to really start from the ground floor to develop a new market, to penetrate new markets, and to look at different ways to bring the public awareness not only to the Roadster but to BMW.
Right, now pay attention, 007. First, your new car. BMW Agile.
James Bond was the first to test drive the Z3 in the Bond movie GoldenEye. BMW made it clear that they did not pay to have the car included. It was a production decision to have Bond trade in his Aston Martin for a Bimmer.
May I remind you, 007, that you have a license to kill, not to break the traffic limits.
The new Bond movie means a lot for the car, but it also means a lot for the company, because it's not only promoting the Roadster, it's promoting BMW and the image of fun to drive, sporty car, also the emotional appeal that our products have. So can we sell from it? Is it a big showroom? I think it's a big showroom for the entire BMW brand, but it's certainly something that's generated enough excitement to sell out our allocation of Roadsters in 1996.
The Z3 will be offered to American consumers for $28,000, which could convert to about $38,000 for the Canadian market. For From a safety perspective, the Roadster has been put through extensive crash tests and comes equipped with dual airbags and ABS brakes. The new Roadster should be available in dealerships by April or early May, and if pre-orders are any indication, the Z3 is already a big success.
I thought it was immense fun. I mean, it was just a wonderful car. I mean, we're used to driving Miatas and seeing them as the benchmarks in fun sports cars, but I think this is taking it onto a new level. It's got the strongest chassis that I've come across. I mean, you can throw it into bends and it just sticks on. I think your grandma could drive this at 10/10ths of the speed. So, heck, if you put an order in now, I think it's going to be 6 months to a year before you get hold of one. Because this is going to be the hottest thing on four wheels, I'm convinced.
BMW. Does that stand for Bavarian Marketing Wonder? More later on Kenzie's Corner.
On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at one of the luminaries in the light truck market. This is the Toyota T100. Now, when this vehicle was first released, a lot of people, yours truly included, identified some pretty major shortcomings. Well, Toyota have reworked this T100 for '96 in an effort to address those problems. Have they succeeded? We'll have the answer for you at the end of this edition of Test Drive. When the T100 was first introduced, the two biggest beefs were a lack of power and no extended cab version. For the '95 model year, both of these shortcomings have been addressed. Beneath the hood resides a completely new 3.4-litre fuel-injected double overhead cam engine. Power is now rated at a healthy 190 horsepower and 220 pounds-feet of torque. This represents a whopping jump of 40 horsepower and 40 pounds-feet of torque when compared to the original engine. The new engine now delivers the punch that the T100 has always cried out for, and it does so at low RPM, which is unusual for a multi-valve engine. The towing capacity for the 4x4 tested here is now set at 4,500 pounds, a realistic figure for what is, after all, a full-size truck in all but name. Matched with this engine is a 5-speed manual that ranks as one of the best I've ever tested to date. The shifts are crisp, the throw length's civilized, and the ratio's well chosen. Factor in the light and progressive clutch action and the T100 is a true joy to drive. Shifting between 2- and 4-wheel drive is as simple as that, and it can be accomplished at speeds up to 80 kilometers an hour. The reason for the shift on the fly capability is Toyota's ADD system, which stands for Automatic Disconnecting Differential. This name must have been dreamed up in the ad department because it is not a true representation of what actually happens at the wheels. That aside, the system has the desired effect. In two-wheel drive, however, the truck develops a tendency to oversteer if the road becomes slippery. A quick yank on the lever and you're into four-wheel drive, and this is not a problem. If you venture off-road as we did, the system offers 4 low. When selected, the T100 will walk up some very steep hills, and it does so in stump-pulling fashion. The suspension is comprised of double wishbones and torsion bars up front and multi-leaf springs in back. For a truck, the T100's ride is remarkably civilized. This holds true from the building site to the backwards. The only time it loses its composure is when you hit a series of bumps. Under these conditions, you know you're riding in a pickup. The steering is still of the recirculating ball variety. The drawback with this system is that the on-center feel is rather vague. That said, the variable assist setup offers better than average feedback. Our tester featured a mammoth set of 31 10-5-15 tires. These things have grip to spare and yet are not overly noisy on the road. If there is a drawback, it is that they elevate the vehicle to such an extent that anyone vertically challenged will need a stepladder to get in. For me, I like the elevated position because of the improved view down the road. The T100 comes with front discs and rear drums and is offered with optional anti-lock. No complaints here at all. The stops are short, straight and predictable, and the ABS stays out until absolutely needed.
There is perhaps no better investment for anybody that owns a pickup truck than a box liner. These things prevent an awful lot of damage from occurring in the back. Regardless of whether you're just a regular punter, drive the big fellas, or ferry the family around, a box liner's worth every cent you pay for it. Inside, the T100 has more in common with a luxury car than a pickup. I say this not because of the power options. Far from it, ours had crank windows, manual mirrors and locks, but from a quality perspective. Everything fits together as it should, and the choice of fabrics and plastics is great, and the analog dash displays all the important information logically. My only gripe has to do with the radio. I think you get the picture. The extra cab option is worth its weight in gold. There is acres of room which provides lockable storage space, and if you fold and slide the passenger seat forward, plenty of room in the rear for 3 passengers. On the safety front, the T100 fares as well as most trucks with a driver's side airbag, optional ABS, adjustable upper anchors, and a third high-mounted stoplight. Well, that's it for a rather wild and woolly test drive. We've seen everything from snow to sunshine and drag race dump trucks. Toyota have done a good job with the new T100. The Super Cab and extra horsepower afforded by the new V6 make a world of difference, and now give the T100 the attributes it should have had from day one. You know, it's said that timing is everything, and BMW is well aware of that, because still to come from Porsche and Mercedes, their own versions of a Roadster, and that's in the near future. And of course, BMW is hoping now with the Z3, or Z3 as they're calling it in the States, that this little car is going to quickly begin to satisfy a growing appetite. Okay, now let's head to the garage and join Bill Gardner.
This week I want to talk a little bit about automotive charging systems. I'm sure you're well aware that cars and light trucks have 12-volt batteries in them and 12-volt electrical systems. Now it's the job of the battery and the starter motor together to crank that vehicle over, and assuming that the vehicle's in a proper state of tune, it's going to start up. But after it starts, it's the job of the alternator and battery to team up and keep that vehicle electrically alive. In other words, the alternator is going to charge the battery, it's going to return that charge to the battery that you've taken out by starting it, and it's going to drive all the accessories on that vehicle, and it's going to keep that battery in a fully charged condition as you're driving and for the next time you want to start the car. Now we've got a voltmeter hooked up to the 12-volt battery on this car, and you can see that the voltmeter reads right in around 12 volts right now, which is what we refer to as the open circuit voltage. It's just reading the voltage available from that battery. Now after this vehicle starts, you can see the voltmeter needle starting to climb slowly as the battery accepts a charge and the alternator's output comes up. Now, it isn't coming up to where it should be on this particular vehicle. It's an 88 model. The alternator is getting a little bit on the tired side, and we've cycled the battery down by repeatedly starting it. It should be up here right in around 14 volts when everything is normal. You know, 10 or 12 years ago, an alternator of roughly this physical size typically had an output of somewhere in around 60 amps. Today, this late model alternator that I've got in my hands right here has an output of 100 amps in order to satisfy all the electrical requirements on today's cars. Now, this tremendous output out of the small size means a lot of heat generated, and some of the problems that can occur are quite obvious. For example, on this one here, the rear bearing is gone in this alternator, and you can see that the cover that protects that bearing is completely fallen away, and half of the ball bearings in the back of this alternator bearing have completely fallen out the back. And if I grasp the rotor shaft and turn it, you can see a lot of movement in there. Now, not all the problems are as obvious as this. Many of them are internal. The rotors are failing at a pretty great rate. This one has actually melted down. The plastic in this rotor has melted and come out. We've got a fair bit of wear on the slip rings here, and you can see part of the back bearing on this unit as well. Now, you can see a cooling fan in the back of this alternator. This one's hidden when the alternator is assembled, and there's one out at the front by the pulley as well. And these two fans help to dissipate some of the heat generated by this alternator. But there is a tremendous amount of heat involved, and eventually it fatigues all these parts. The vast majority of today's cars and light trucks have charging systems where the alternator and voltage regulator are married into one compact unit like you see here. This is a freshly rebuilt unit, But before you go and replace something like this, check the obvious. Make sure that your fan belt is in good condition and properly tightened. If you take your car into a repair shop or auto electric shop, they're going to check things like the fuses, fusible links, the wiring harness, and state of charge of your vehicle's battery before they condemn this unit. Now, it's a fairly simple deal to remove and replace the alternator from most of today's cars and light trucks. If you're going to do it yourself in your driveway or garage, make sure that you take it to somebody that can properly bench test this unit. Most of the suppliers and rebuilders have test benches to adequately performance test this unit off the car, and that's by far the best route to go before you replace this. They're typically $150 to $200 for many of today's cars. If you've got an older vehicle, 10 or 12 years old, you might get away with $100, but there's many exotic cars today built in Europe that have alternator charging systems where the alternator can be as much as $1,000 for a replacement unit. So make darn good and sure that you've had it properly tested before you replace it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 96.
If you've ever wondered what racing's top drivers do with old equipment, the answer could be found at Collector's Studio in downtown Toronto. The gallery boasts the most exclusive assortment of original memorabilia and models in North America.
So we've replicated the model down to the last wire in detail. It's all die-cast metal, weighs about 15 pounds, and everything opens, steering turns the wheels, even the suspension works. Well, I've been a car enthusiast for several years, reading car magazines, watching motor racing on TV, etc. I really wanted my job to be my passion, my hobby. So I decided that I was going to do something along these lines. I didn't really know exactly what at the time, but this gallery is what it's evolved into. What we have here is a large variety of models, paintings, artwork. I have a large collection, probably the largest in North America, of original, authentic Formula One and IndyCar memorabilia, drivers' helmets, uniforms, visors, gloves, etc. Recently we've acquired Jacques Villeneuve's uniform, the Indy 500 steering wheel that Jacques Villeneuve used to victory this year, 1995. So there's a nice feeling here, there's a lot of history in the shop. Well, the merchandise that we have on display here is very difficult to obtain. For the first part, there's not a lot of it out there. A driver might have 4 or 5 uniforms during the year. The majority of those will go to the sponsors that are paying the big money. Often I get the merchandise directly from the drivers and they're very happy to have their stuff hanging on the walls in here. Other times I buy from auctions or private collectors. I want to make this shop the best that it can be. I want it to be a landmark. It's very common for people to walk in having not seen a shop like this and they'll say, wow, this is cool, or how come I didn't know you were here, and where do you get all this stuff? I mean, there's a lot of general enthusiasm here. The people that are walking in here for the most part are car enthusiasts like myself, so they can really appreciate what they're seeing here.
Well, sadly, it's time to say goodbye to our long-term Accent. When we brought this vehicle in, the object of the exercise was to find out if its long-term reliability was going to be the equal of its initial quality. Well, I'm glad to report that it will be. And you know what? Above all, this car is fun to drive. The hatchback version is more than versatile, the driving position is good, and for running around town or as a first-time car, it takes a lot to beat the Accent.
Proof of how well the Accent has been received is in the awards it has won. We at Motoring gave the Accent our Economy Car of the Year for '95. Since then it has been judged as the best value in Car Guide magazine's Small Car Shootout, as well as being tipped as a best buy for '96, again by Car Guide magazine. In a nutshell, the Accent comes one way, and that is very well recommended.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns what to do when your alternator or charging system fails. One of the first things you want to do is get that vehicle safely to a location where you can make an inspection of the fan belts, because obviously a broken belt that should be driving the alternator is going to render your whole charging system inoperative. And in most cases, the belt that drives the alternator also drives the water pump and engine cooling fan, so you'll quickly be faced with an overheating engine if you continue. Secondly, curtail or shut off the use of any electrical accessories you can possibly live without. Heated rear windows, CD players and radios, fog lamps, etc. Those can all go off. Now obviously if it's the winter time and you need defroster or wipers, you can't live without those. But you get the idea. Use common sense and turn off as many things as you possibly can. And start thinking about working your way home or towards a repair facility, because you can't live for too long on just the battery. The battery will sustain the vehicle for some time, but you've got to address this problem as soon as possible. Now, if the vehicle actually has quit on the side of the road somewhere, you have a couple of choices. Obviously, you can get the vehicle towed, or if it's more convenient, what I quite often do is take a fully charged fresh battery to the location, remove the dead battery from the vehicle, install that fully charged battery, shut off as many things as I can, and start working my way back home with that fully charged battery. I've usually got half an hour to an hour and a half depending on the size of the battery and the type of vehicle involved. But in any case, if that volt light comes on or your charging system voltmeter indicates that you've got a malfunction in that system, don't totally ignore it, because it won't be long before it lets you down on the side of the road. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
You know, the market is a funny thing. If you'd conducted some market research about 6 years ago to see if you could sell a $20,000 two-seat Roadster, the market would have told you you're crazy. Then came the Mazda Miata, so much for market research. Now, if 2 years ago you'd conducted a clinic and said, would you like to buy a Mazda Miata for twice that much money? The market would have given you the same response. What, are you nuts? And yet, here it is, the BMW Z3 Roadster. This car will sell for around $40,000 in Canada. Now, interestingly, that's less than it'll sell for in Germany. Now, part of the reason for that is that the car is built in North America. Those pretty body panels, by the way, are stamped by Canada's own Magna Corporation, albeit in a plant in South Carolina. But the other part of the reason why the car costs more in Germany is that they can get away with it. Again, it's the market. After all, the Miata sells for almost $40,000 in Germany. Now, either Mazda's really hosing those Germans or they're giving it away to us. So, are Canadians prepared to spend this kind of money for a car like that? Well, BMW Canada hopes so. They're expecting to sell around 700 cars. Two other players are hoping there's a market for cars like this. Both Mercedes-Benz and Porsche have expensive two-seat Roadsters coming out later in 1996. They'll be even pricier than this car. So, are Canadians going to spend money for a car like that? As nice a car as it is? I don't know. Maybe that's why most marketing guys I know have gray hair. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You may have noticed the German license plates on our Z3. That's because this car is heading over to Europe, but there's very little difference between this one and the one we're going to see in Canada. And when we do see it in Canada, we're going to take a closer look at the Z3 from a performance point of view. And we're also going to invite along a few of the Z3's would-be competitors, if you know what I mean, for a little comparison test. Sounds like fun, so make sure you watch out for that program as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 96 has been brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.